Pankaj Murarka also joining us, CIO Renaissance Investment Managers. Pankaj, hi, Harsh here. I want to quickly try and understand from you, what is it that you believe will play out, and what is it in the sense that how do you believe markets will respond? Because there's just so much money sitting on the side waiting for a likely event which could see a correction. Do you believe that we could see a substantial correction at all?
Hi, Harsh.
Hi.
Harsh, it's an evolving situation. We need to watch out for it because, yes, the situation is fluid and fragile. Having said that, I still believe that we don't see that this issue escalating into a full-fledged war. But having said that, we need to acknowledge that there is a new normal in terms of India's defense doctrine, and especially given the fact that we have a troubled neighborhood. I don't see this event, or I think probably the new normal could be a sustained escalation. I don't see that having a major impact, economic impact on India. India as an economy is extremely resilient, and now we have the fifth largest economy in the world. So we're pretty large from a global perspective also as an economic enterprise or as an economic power. I don't see that impacting India's economy in a meaningful manner in that sense. And I think India has the resilience to withstand this. So given that context, I think there could be some short-term pullbacks in the markets, but investors should take a slightly more medium-term view. And that pullback should be used as an opportunity to put money to work, taking medium-term outlook or keeping a medium-term view in perspective in that sense.
Right. Pankaj, good afternoon, Hiral on this side. Now, taking into consideration the escalation that Pakistan is looking at right now, though the Indian armed forces have been able to neutralize the same, do you think this is going to be something that the markets will be worried about from here on, and you will not see that dry powder which is lying being deployed, and it is going to be consumption that is going to be taking a beating then?
Well, I'm not a defense expert, but my base assumption from what we are seeing or all of us have seen and read about in terms of situation, I think there is a new normal because we have been and will continue to have a troubled neighborhood. And it's always challenging because we are the only country in the world which shares physical borders with two nuclear powers. No other country in the world has that kind of geographical configuration that we have. So I think probably the new framework is probably a sustained escalation. So we have to get adjusted to it. And in that context, I think there could be, given the fact that from an equity market perspective, I think given the fact that we've had a very sharp rally in equities in the last 4 weeks, people might want to take profits and there could be some pullback in the market. But as I said, I think that's a good opportunity for people to put money to work. I don't see this in any meaningful manner impacting India's economic prospects over the medium term or long term. So I don't see this spiraling to an extent where it can have a negative rub-off effect on India's growth prospects or long-term growth prospects in that sense. So I think all of that in my base assumption still remains in place, and which is why I say that any correction should be used as an opportunity to put money to work into markets.
So, Pankaj, which are the sectors would you say where money should be deployed, taking into consideration the current correction that you're probably seeing?
We've been positive on consumer as a sector. We've turned positive after a long gap of almost 3 years. So consumer is one where we see a gradual recovery in consumer spends in India coming back over the course of this year and over the next 2 years. We have quite a few drivers of that. One, aggregate consumption is on a low base, and given the fact that we have inflation which is moderating in India, we've already had 2 rate cuts from RBI and probably another 2 rate cuts during the course of this year. We see a meaningful recovery in consumption spends in India. So consumer as a sector from an equity market perspective looks attractive because the sector has underperformed in the last 2 years and valuations are pretty much in line with long-term averages. So that's clearly one we like. Also, it's a defensive as a sector in that sense and has downside protection. Apart from that, we like financials as a whole, both on the lending side, which is banks, and on the non-lending side, which are capital market-oriented franchises and insurance,
Right.
because the underlying tailwind of growth
Right.
in India. So
Pankaj,
these are the two sectors.
Pankaj, I'm going to interrupt over here. We also have Major General G.G. Dwivedi, retired army veteran. Sir, good afternoon. From the information that we're picking up from the Ministry of Defense, you have Pakistan who tried to escalate, but that bid has been negated and the proportionate response has gone from India. What would you have to say to this?
Well, first and foremost, I think this response was required because India has been faced with this proxy war for the last about 3.5 decades. And mostly their strategy was to fight this proxy war, mostly on the line of control or in the hinterland. And I have operated extensively in these areas. But the current issue is that Pakistan has not mandated trade. So therefore, there has to be change in strategy. And this time around, after the Pahalgam massacre, the Indian government has gone in for a very holistic strategy. That is, that we need to tackle it at the multiple levels. Diplomatically, of course, a number of actions were taken. Politically, we also isolating Pakistan. But more importantly, until there is a matching punitive response, means military response, it won't have taken a message through. So this response is very calibrated. There's no sense of alarm. We have chosen very specific targets, which are basically terrorist infrastructure. We also ensured there's no collateral damage. And the response has been very, very, I would say, calibrated, means that it is not overwhelming. Only 9 targets have been selected. And therefore, I don't think there should be any sense of alarm as far as the economy dimensions are concerned. Because the Indian economy, is primarily consumer-driven economy, and our vital are doing very well. And internationally also, there's no panic or alarm. So I think the situation is very stable. It's only defensive action we have taken. The international community also understands our compulsion to take the action. And more importantly, we have drawn a new red line and given a very strong message to Pakistan that in case they don't mend their ways, then we will be now taking the war across the line of control and hitting at the very nerve centers of the terrorism. Over to you.
Major General Dwivedi, we also understand from unconfirmed reports, and ANI is reporting that India had to use S-400, missiles, missile systems to neutralize some of the incoming missiles from Pakistan. This seems to be a major escalation and beyond the artillery or high caliber artillery which is currently being used. Do you think that there's a chance that the escalation will now increase, given that the kind of weaponry now is being used by Pakistan?
Harsh, you're very right, because so far our action had been, as I said, primarily around the line of control. And there mostly weapons used were infantry weapons or light artillery. But now this, threshold has been crossed. And today it is a shooting war across the line of control or all the international border. So therefore, when in such a situation, currently it's mostly aerial strikes. And you have to use all your weapon systems to ensure that your airspace is well protected. And India has acquired a very potent weapon system, S-400, which gives you high degree of security against the hostile aerial strikes. So to that extent, yes, the threshold has been now elevated. And from the purely, artillery and ground weapons or the weapons, now the weapon system has been escalated, and this is escalation. But then again, please remember that it's very selective. It's not a all-out. It's very selective targeting, very calibrated. Targets are calibrated. Weapon systems also are very specific. So therefore, when you talk about the escalation ladder, the bottom line is like what you said, artillery, infantry weapons. The next comes the aerial strikes. Now we are somewhat, I would say, at level 1 or 2 escalation, and there can be many more. But right at the moment, I think it is very well calibrated. It is under control.